Welcome to our back to school edition of our EdTech Leaders Webcast. I'm David Couch from the Department of Education. I'm here in Adair County, wonderful Adair County in Columbia, Kentucky. We spent some time driving around Lindsey Wilson College yesterday. I'm joined here from KD with Dee Dee Connor to my left here. She's our Chief Data Officer. Phil Coleman is our Chief Technology Officer. Mike Lettingham is the Director of the Office of the CIO. We have Bob Hackworth, who is our Chief Information Technology Officer, and we have Chuck Austin, who leads our field staff, plus any kind of major project that we put in place. And we also have Judy Evans in the audience here with us, who leads the effort here for Region 6. And thanks for joining us today. We do have Go Soapbox open. We have 3 questions that we would like you to respond to and 2 discussion items. And we're going to go over those topics, so it'd be helpful if you get on there and start responding now, or you can wait till we talk about them and then respond either way that you want to handle that. But we're going to go through that agenda. But first, we're going to spend some time here on Adair County. I'm here with Superintendent Reed. How you doing?
Doing very well, and thanks so much for coming here today.
I read your technology plan last night. You all are doing some fantastic things here. So I'll let you introduce the county and the people that we have here with Adair County with you.
Maybe I'll just start off with a bit of history of this county and a little bit of an overview. Adair County is predominantly rural, as you saw when you drove in, no doubt. Our school district is comprised of about 2,750 students. We've been actually growing in enrollment until this year, and it appears that things are a little bit static this year. You did mention that we have Lindsey Wilson College that plays a very vital role in our after-school programs, and also we serve as their learning laboratories. That's a really strong partnership that we love and want to nourish and continue to see that grow. Thanks to a very forward-thinking board and to a community that has bought into the fact that Adair County Schools is a very important part of our economic engine. We've seen a lot of changes here in 3 years. Roughly 3-4 years ago, we were a district that was not quite in financial trouble, but the budget was certainly stressed. We had incredible technology needs. A lot of our structures were unloved and uncared for. And if you drove the campus, you can see that all of that has changed. So we're very proud of what has happened, and it's been because we've attacked it from just a variety of fronts. But I'm pleased to say that Adair County Schools are healthy. We're growing our technology and headed towards a day when we can have a one-to-one situation with pads or different forms of technology that we can get out there in student hands. We know the role it plays, how important it is.
You know, I know you have a unique background. I think that really you have a real emphasis on getting students prepared for life in college and career readiness. I think your background helps out with that. You've been a superintendent here 4 years?
This is 4th year, yes, sir. And before that, owned local business and was involved. Actually, I chaired the Work Ready Community Initiative. Adair County is a community that is work ready in progress, and we're that close to being designated full work ready. And that's so important as we try to attract jobs in here. So what we have tried to do with our school system, and thinking again, economic engine, is to change our direction from college for all, where we were missing 80% of our students having success, to a district that requires that all students, when they complete high school, are not only college ready, those that are headed that direction, but everybody's career ready. You're never going to miss the boat on giving students options. So right at this time, we've gone from just a handful of traditional old career paths to, I think we're ready to hit 43. Which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I know you do the Leader in Me. You're a big emphasis from a federal grant.
Absolutely. Yeah. We were early on, and I'm pleased to report that 98% of our teachers here voted to get involved in the Race to the Top initiative. And they required a certain threshold percentage of teachers that wanted in, or you're out, So the federal government was very selective on who got those grants, but I want to be a little bit careful, but I think Adair County teachers had the highest number of affirmative answers of, yes, we need change in our district. So let's try something even if it's wrong. And it's worked so well. It's been a very, very powerful tool to help leverage this district forward.
Now, I see in your notes here the Indian Academy. I don't know what that is, but you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sometimes we don't know what it is. It is so new. It's something that came out, not necessarily from me, but was certainly with support from me and our board. But we have a very loose assemblage of partnerships with 9 colleges and universities. So students have a lot of choices. They can look at Campbellsville or Lindsey Wilson or a multitude of online resources from colleges and universities. They can they can pick and choose what fits them at a very reduced rate. And we're using the free market concept, keeping that price down. So students could conceivably, and a lot of them are already, finishing up a good year and a half or more of college by the time they graduate from Adair County High School. If they want to spend 3 days on a college campus and go right ahead and move forward with their education post-secondary at the same time they're completing high school, more power to them. We're right there saying, let's make it happen. So 9 colleges and universities so far. We hope there's more. We'll partner with just about anybody we can.
So we have your board chairman here.
We do, and it's because of our board and people like Mr. Burton and their support, or we would be dead in the water.
Yeah. Would you like to say anything, Mr. Burton, kind of coaching to all the ed tech leaders throughout the state?
Well, we've been very, very fortunate to have people that could work with. The board has worked real well together with our superintendent, and I feel like that the community has supported us on a lot of things. So I feel like it's a group effort. It's not just 1 or 2 people.
Well, speaking of a group effort, Carla, you've been here since 1996.
Yes, 1996. I've seen lots of changes since 1996, but I really do enjoy my job, and I feel like it's an honor to come to work every day. I also have my staff here with me today. Jason Rector, my network engineer. Trey Grider is our district technician, and Dylan Claiborne is assistant technician. And I'm pleased to have them here supporting us today as well.
Judy got on camera whether you wanted or not.
And
but
Judy Evans.
They just stepped off GQ magazine.
That's right. I felt
pretty good.
I didn't wear my tie today. I felt these guys got their game up here today. Carla, I noticed from your technology plan, it looks like you do one every year, and it was very extensive and very helpful. I think it was written in a way that the average person could follow it. And the part that I liked about it, I told you a little bit before the webcast, that I hadn't seen some others. You talked about the things that you did well last year and didn't do well, things that you want to address this year, and big objectives that you have, and the things that you didn't get a chance to address, and what you're trying to do this year. The things that, as I went through it, is you spent a lot of time and energy trying to make sure 8th graders have technology literacy, right?
Early on, ever since KDE asked us to report on the technology readiness report on student proficiency or literacy in technology for 8th graders, I didn't want to just pull a number out of a hat or ask principals to go around and do a checklist. I decided that we would use Learning.com's 21st Century Skills Assessment, which is based on ISTE standards, and I felt like that would be a really good tool and avenue to really assess our student and technology literacy skills. We also assessed staff, administrators, library media specialists. I think they were a separate subgroup, but that worked out really well with us with that for the early years. And then when they came out with the Wayfind teacher assessment, that is actually aligned to teacher standards, and we have been using that. So, and on the staff assessments, we kind of did that in a rotation, like every 3 years we would assess everyone. If you weren't proficient, then you would be assessed the next year. And then by the time we ended that 3-year cycle, pretty much everyone was proficient. And it wasn't anything major. It's not like our teachers aren't proficient. Just some people are more comfortable, I think, even with those kinds of tests, even teachers, than others. But it has been a good tool for us, and we've used that.
I can also see from your plan that you have dedication for internet safety. It's a big part of your
Yes.
structure. Can you talk about what you do here? Because it leads into a later part of our webcast is the reason I'm asking you to hit upon it.
For internet safety, early on, we looked at digital driver's license, and that is great, and it's expanded so much that I want to revisit that. But early on, we went with Common Sense Media. They have an E-rate curriculum that we go through, and every student receives that instruction before they're allowed to use their accounts in the fall. So our STCs have just finished up those accounts. We also ask our teachers to explain in words that will make sense to their students according to their ability level, the acceptable use policy. And if you've looked at that, that is very expensive too. But we want to make sure that we cover everything that we possibly can. So that's what we've been using for quite some time, and it's worked for us.
It fits into a major announcement that I'm going to share here in just a few minutes, but I think digital citizenship is so important.
It is.
And as we're immersed in this technology society, making sure we're keeping our very good people skills. And while technology can definitely be powerful and give access to information, it can do some very cruel things.
Right.
And so I think it's important for us to always, especially in this business of K-12, to be on the front of that. So I appreciate the effort and the extensiveness that looks like you're going through within your plan. I also saw where you have some big initiatives for wireless. You're talking about coming up. And by the way, let's talk about wireless they have in here, Phil. I mean, you said the wireless is great. Talk about why the wireless is good.
It's just a really good experience for someone coming in with a computer that's really not on the network, and you put it on and you log in and it immediately connects, and it's just a really good experience. And I know on the back end it's harder for the technical staff because you're doing transparent proxy and you're capturing the MAC addresses, and if anything happens, you got to do all that tracking down and all that kind of stuff. But for the end user, it's a really good experience not having to go through. Let me try to figure out what a login is and what my credentials are and all that kind of stuff. So for a guest, for me, it's a really good experience.
And it was nice because even though we're kind of in an open setting, we don't have a cell signal right here. I know we're trying to expand that and get that better across the state, but I know as we set up here, I think that's an important thing. Is it a good experience for someone just coming in and being able to access things? And it looks like you checked that block. I know that's not easy to do, but I know you have aspirations with wireless also to your buses and also maybe homebound.
Yes,
Let's talk
we
about
do.
that a little bit.
As part of the Race to the Top grant, some of the focus was on community access to technology and access to the internet and technology on school buses. So we have on 7 school buses, we have installed wireless routers. It took a considerable amount of time to get it configured and set up, but we're starting to use that this year. Even on the vocational bus, students can have some, we hope, quality time on the bus instead of just sitting there playing around on the way to the vocational school and Russell Springs, some quality time there. So we do have that just as a trial. We didn't want to put all of our funding into buses because we didn't know how that would work. We also decided we have 3 mobile Wi-Fi hotspots that we're going to send out with homebound teachers. We've got those ready to go, and that's for those staff that don't have internet in their home, and we will be doing that.
The other part I saw in here is you're trying to looking at Skype for homebound students.
Yes.
So you had the balance of what does that mean technically and other things involved with making that happen. So
Right.
I'll talk about that.
Mr. Reed, do you want
I'll
to?
be glad to talk
were-
about it. It just seems that there is some disconnect in the traditional way that we have delivered homebound instruction because the student at home has not seen or cannot see in the past their counterparts out there in the classroom. So why not use our technology? Let's try some Skype, which is not anything really new, and some other technologies that we have in place so that they can have a better experience at home and not lose that connectedness with their counterparts in the classroom. Of course, with that, just as you mentioned a second ago, comes privacy issues. So we're trying to work through that, but we think there are sensible ways to make this happen and move on with it.
Carl, again, we're going to talk about purchasing a little bit later on with the technology activity report. I thought it was important, as I noticed from your plan, our discussion at a time, that you're part of the approval process for
Yes.
purchases, regardless of the funding source.
Right.
So talk about that a little bit And so Mike Lettingham's going to talk about this as relationship to technology activity report, some of the things we're seeing and not seeing in that, and how we can make sure we are capturing all the purchases.
For quite a few years now, I have been responsible to approve all technology purchases, regardless of funding source in our school district. And it's a little bit extra work for me, but it does help me behind the scenes to do those reports that we have to do, the readiness report and the TAR. And so that's what we do. And it's worked well, and it's been probably 8, 9, 10 years, several years that we've done that.
So Mike will talk about this a little bit here, but we have to understand, because we cut down the commodity codes so much, is where the money is going. Right. And we thought by simplifying those commodity codes we could do that, but we noticed in certain technology activity reports there's some things that are blank that we know there's no way that's blank. So what we'll be asking, and Mike will be covering this in detail, is for the CIO to get much more involved with that process. In some cases you may have the CFO pushing you back and saying this is what I do, but the reason I wanted to highlight that before Mike's discussion is you're involved with the purchasing process, but you may not be involved with the TAR process and in inspecting it.
Right.
And so we're definitely going to want that step to where you're sticking your nose in and say, I got to see where the money is going. And why certain things are in there and why certain things are not in there. So I think that's an important role that you play. Also, I noticed there's some things that you're trying to address. I know the phone system at the high school and the middle school is really old. And the timing's bad too, because E-rate is de-emphasizing spending money on phone systems, but I also noticed you're replacing your core switches and access to points at certain parts of the district, because you have a lot of Chromebooks and iPads and a variety of end devices that you're big into BYOD here.
We do. We are really growing. Last year on our school report card, we had 1,100 and some student devices. This year, I just completed those totals. It's well over 1,500 devices. So we've really grown, and most of that is Chromebooks and iPads. So I'm really proud of all the growth that we've had.
So just be on standby. Mike is going to be asking you some questions during the week when we get to that part. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight before we kind of go on? This won't be the last time we talk with you, but are there any key things in the district you think would be helpful to your peers throughout the state?
I think we're good. Oh, V-Brick. We did, when we built this school, we had in the plan, we found out that we were going to be running cable TV. We pulled all that out and installed V-Brick, and we're starting to use that more and more. This year, we're using it for professional development training videos, and we're going to be using it in the classroom more.
I tell you what I can see from the technology readiness surveys is the steady improvement in modernizing here. And I know you've done a lot with facilities and instruction, but also I see the technology, the slow but sure replacement of older things to get yourself. You're not totally where you want to be, I can see that, but you're way down the line, and it's impressive.
For many years, we just didn't have the budget, and then in some instances, maybe not the support, but the past 3 or 4 years, we've grown tremendously, and I'm very thankful for that.
Our biggest concern would still be those closet switches at Adair County High School and middle school that are outdated. We're just sitting here anxiously awaiting the release of those E-rate funds, and we're ready to make that project happen and speed the whole thing up.
Yep. And, you know, with the new kind of funding that's been open for Category 2 for sites, we should be able to make some things happen this year. We haven't been able to happen in a long, long time. So we'll go to the other parts of the agenda. First of all, I want to make a announcement from Sherry Gossett with KISTI. And they're going to have a fall event called Legal Matters. And for anybody that's attended those during KISTI, they're a fascinating event. So it's the combination of technology and the legal world. And they do mix a lot. For those of us that know in this world, they do mix a lot, and we get involved with that a whole lot. That's going to be October 21st at the Galt House. KISTI at the end of this month will be sitting out a registration that you'll be able to see. It's for ed tech leaders, but it's also for their administrators. Have anyone's been? How many people have sat in on that session? Okay, it's fantastic. And Jody Rose does a good job. Jason Bathen of the University of Kentucky. Is there anyone else I'm leading? I know. Does Marty play a role in that one or not? I'm not sure, but I know those two lead it, and they engage the audience. So they're wanting other administrators there, but they're going to hold a cap of 300 people. because they do have audience interaction that's going back and forth. So I encourage you to sign up early. It is one of the most entertaining and informative sessions that I've gone to at Kisti, but I encourage you to go to it because it really does help you go back and be part of a bigger discussion with your district. I want to make sure I get that out there. Also, I sent you yesterday an announcement that's pretty cool for Kentucky. I was in Utah last week with my peers across the United States. So I consider the K-12 CIO for Kentucky, and so I was with my peers in Utah. And I asked them, has anyone else reached, because I knew we had very recently, the 100 kilobit per student mark? And all of them said no, they had not. Some of them were halfway there, a quarter way there. I felt that we were the first one to reach that mark, but I felt even more confident when they applauded. Because I was just asking a question. And what's cool for Kentucky history, yesterday I sent you something that I sent back 20 years ago, September of 1995, when Kentucky became the first state in the nation to have high-speed connection. We considered high-speed back then 56 kb connection that served the entire district. Everybody got that one link. And I'll just think about the progress we made. We have 100 kilobit per student over the past 20 years, and appears to be the first state to reach that milestone. And that's a team effort. Obviously, we had AT&T and all the telecommunications companies that played a huge role in making that happen. The school districts obviously played a big role. We had KD staff that were major players in making that happen. But the biggest benefactors are students across the state. Have access to a wide range of instructional tools and resources, as do our teachers. And so they're the real benefactor of this progress. And I do want to give a tip of the hat to our legislature for funding that, because in the 2014 session they provided funds for us to beef up the network. And we did what we said we would do in the time frame we said we would do it with the money that we were given. And so just in July of 2014, we started that. And we have upgraded the entire state before the beginning of the school year. So, high fives to everyone that made that happen. It is worth celebrating. Not that we have everything down and we're perfect, but Kentucky is definitely a leader in that category and worth giving high fives to. Also, in the past 2 weeks, the publication came out that ranked Kentucky's school system the top 5 in the nation. I don't know if you saw that. They looked at 13 different metrics, ranking the state school systems that we have in place. Kentucky ranked 5th. And they take a look at like dropout rates, math scores, lowest pupil-teacher ratio, safest schools, and bullying. That's why I was interested in bringing that out, because I do think it takes an effort by a district to really address safe schools and make that always on the radar screen, technology-wise and non-technology-wise. But for everyone that's been involved with this, and I was part, I'm starting my 20th year as the CIO of K-12 here in Kentucky. By the way, the longest by far in the United States. I think my closest in the United States is 6 years, but 23rd with the Department of Education. But it has been a fun ride since the Education Reform Act to see Kentucky's significant and steady climb toward the top. So everyone that's involved with school systems and has been as a student, as a parent, as a teacher, as an administrator, as a vendor partner, should give high fives, because we're not perfect, just like you're saying you're doing some things well here. We do need to sometimes take a step back and recognize our achievements, and those are 2 major ones that's well-positioned, both of those well-positioned Kentucky going forward. We've also, I know we've announced in recent webcasts, we've upgraded the firewalls across the state. All 173 districts have beefed up firewalls, and also part of that presentation, I'm going to ask Chuck Austin to give us an update on it, was the Internet Content Management System. So it allows us to maximize that 100 kilobit per student for a lot longer. So Chuck, can you give us an update on where we're at with our implementation of that?
Absolutely. Thank you, David. The project is going extremely well. As a matter of fact, I think most folks should be aware of a broadcast we had on July the 30th featuring John Jenner from Lightspeed. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, please go back and kind of watch that. There was a lot of really good information that we provided. Right now we're in process of finishing up what we call phase 2, where the existing Lightspeed customers, we're moving them into the KenRack, and we had a second round of priority sites folks that had third-party agreements that were expiring here in the month of August and September. We're looking to finish Phase 2 up this week. I see Judy nodding her head over there. And then next week, we actually start what I'm going to call the big push toward installing hardware for the rest of the general population. Basically, I think August the 25th is our go-live date. We're going to have 3 teams on the ground. They're going to be installing hardware based on a regional focus, okay? And we look to have all of the hardware for the entire state, other than the 7 districts that we realize have contracts that expire beyond FY16, done by mid-September. Now, just to emphasize, that's a hardware-only install for those districts, and you should be aware of this. It's basically the device just going in the CAN rack. It's going to be powered up, but it's going to be in what we call bypass mode. So it's just going to be passing traffic through it. It's not actually going to be filtering anything. And what that will allow is each district, at their discretion, to schedule their actual migration. And that's a pretty simple process where you're just going to pick up the phone. John Jenner has provided a contact number. You can get yourselves on a schedule with the Lightspeed team and go ahead and actually do your migration to that new Internet Content Management platform. So we're getting ready to really kick into high gear. And as I mentioned, we look to have all the hardware done by mid-September. John's been awesome at sending out weekly updates, and there's a lot of really great information that he publishes. There are some virtual training sessions scheduled to start August the 18th. And we encourage everybody to try to participate in one of those, as well as to join the community site if you haven't already done so. There's a lot of great information that's out there, and we encourage every district that's yet to migrate to go ahead and start kind of perusing through that information, get your feet wet, and get accustomed to that interface before you actually schedule your migration. And last but not least, we just encourage anybody to continue sending their feedback through. The things that are going well, the things that are not, any success stories that you're having. The Lightspeed team has been just hyper responsive to any questions, issues, improvements, updates, and all kinds of stuff. So David, we're really pleased with the progress we're making.
And we have a district's getting ready to happen. Is it next week or the following week?
Next week, I think, is our install, and then after that, we will be calling soon because we're still running Threat Management Gateway.
Gotcha.
So we're looking forward to that.
Excellent.
And we actually evaluated Lightspeed many years ago, and then we couldn't afford it, so we know it's a good product. We're excited to have it.
Outstanding.
And Chuck, I think from the projections that we have, it's only 6 sites that have told us this year that they won't be going during the December timeframe, and a good number of those are they've already entered into a long-term agreement. It doesn't end soon enough for them to go to it.
That's correct, David. I mean, we're looking to have about 96% of the state implemented by June 30th of 2016, and we absolutely recognize that we had a handful of districts that have agreements beyond that, all right, that we're going to be working with them individually to kind of figure out when's going to be a good time for them.
Yeah. So once again, this is kind of a reminder for Go Soapbox. First of all, we have some questions that we want you to respond to because we're coming up to that part of the webcast soon that we're going to be seeing your replies. But is there anything that's bubbled up so far that we've covered that I should hit upon before we continue on that they've asked about?
What is the best thing about using Lightspeed for those of you who have implemented already?
Well, I think that's just a great, since it is in the social QA forum, I think anybody that's got any comments to that question, please go ahead and provide your input, especially those, or specifically those that have already migrated.
Because I think it's helpful to hear with the things you like, things that went well, which we hope there's a lot of those. Things that didn't go well, we hope there's fewer of those.
Absolutely.
So we can learn on that as we're going through completing the rest of the district.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it appears so far, double thumbs up.
Absolutely.
Is what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And I definitely can see it with the Lightspeed team that they're fully committed to that and the resources to make this a good experience for Kentucky.
Yes, they are.
They got the right players that are involved with it.
Well, and just, I failed to mention, hats off to our school districts that are working very hard and working with us cooperatively on a very aggressive schedule. And we know that at times, especially with school starting, okay, that's just one more thing on the plate to have to worry about. So we absolutely appreciate all of the effort. And once again, just, any feedback you've got, call your CATS engineers. They're kind of fronting the entire process for us and can take and run forward with anything you've got. And we appreciate that.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yes.
Yes.
I would just add to that, I was just contacted this past week by Candace and another person from Lightspeed, and they're planning on being at our September regional meeting. and they're going to be there for the entire meeting and stay afterwards to work with all of our folks to see if any of them have any specific questions or need any information. So they are more than responsive. They are absolutely the most professional, excellent people I've ever worked with. So they're already on the phone setting up meetings with all the KDs for the regional meetings. So we're due in September. I just wanted to give you a thumbs up for that also.
Right, thanks, Judy. And I know that drives Andy nuts. Did we hit her okay, Nandy?
Let me paraphrase.
Could they hear her?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, Judy was just talking about that this is a very professional organization. They're getting ready to come here, I guess, in September, meet with the folks in the region to go over anything they want to discuss. And it's been a good experience for those. So they're really reaching out, trying to make this a good experience. Thanks, Andy. I know that, how much you enjoy that. The new topic here, Carla, I noticed from your technology plan that one of the big things that's on your radar screen is the implementation of House Bill 5.
Yes.
And so Bob Hackworth, who is now getting in prime speaking position, presented with me to a group of superintendents. I think it's called the Local Superintendent's Advisory Council. Before we presented to the Kentucky State Board of Education, it was the second reading of that regulation. The board approved it unanimously. It now goes on to a public reading here in September. But I wanted Bob to talk about the results of that, but also you received in the mail, superintendents did, 75 recommendations from the Auditor of Public Accounts. And 18 of those 75 recommendations for bettering school practice had to deal around with information technology or education technology. And so what I've also asked Bob to do, and one of the survey questions around this, is there's parts of in the best practice guide that is pretty similar to the auditor's findings or their recommendations. There are some parts that we do not have it in the guide, and it's purposeful. But you can go above and beyond that if you want to. For example, setting up local administrator rights is one of the ones that we don't have in our Arcadia Best Practice Guide that you will see pretty regularly from the auditor. And we get audited by the Auditor of Public Accounts every year. It's one of the things that always shows up in their audit results. We don't set up local administrator rights either at the Department of Education. We try to monitor, we try to actually do what our school districts do. So in the past, when we've asked that question, and we've asked it of you again, 90% of the school districts say, no, we don't set local administrator rights. It was either 95% last time we asked. It's really, really high number. And not that it's not a good practice, but there are some really limitations in doing it as far as staff time. So I wanted Bob to kind of go through what we found out with House Bill 5, the regulation, anything you really wants to point out with that, and then also how that relates to the auditor's kind of recommendations.
Thanks, David. I couldn't have said it better myself.
But you'll be saying more.
That's right, but I'll be saying a little more. And let me go ahead and just jump right into the APA, the auditor's security recommendations. That's a good place for us to jump in right now. And the APA, if you guys aren't aware, I think everyone should have a copy of those materials, provide a long list of recommendations, not just about security, but about all sorts of different processes that go on within a district. And just about any organization, to be honest. It would be good advice for any organization. About 18 of those questions, and there were about 70 questions, about 18 of them were focused around information technology. And a few of those had to do with data security, but in general, the focus of those IT questions wasn't just on data. It covered a lot of different things. And one of those items, as David pointed out, was about the local administrative rights. One of the things that I want to make sure that we get across is that these are not mandatory requirements. These are best practice recommendations, and these are things that you might see from us. I looked at the 18 items, and out of those 18, KDE, I couldn't find a very specific place for about 8 of those or 7 of those 18 items, and that doesn't mean we don't agree with them necessarily. It's just we haven't put them out somewhere. The recommendations that that we did kind of coincide with, you'll find in our data security best practice guide. You'll find in our general security best practice guide that's on the same web page as that. And then KDE also has a lot of different best practice guides or recommendation guides revolving around security for server implementations, that sort of thing. And so a lot of these recommendations will be found in those other documents where they're more targeted versus just a general document. I think that's kind of important for us to throw out there. So question number 55 or 65 from the auditors is the one that has a component about the local administrator, and it says further, district management should ensure only technical and support staff are granted local administrator access to network resources in order to help limit the risk of accidental or intentional introduction of viruses, loss of programs, or data. And again, that's not something that we're going to argue with. However, it's something that as you are looking at your security stance, at your security posture is the buzz phrase, if you will, you need to really hit those items that are going to give you the biggest bang for the buck. One, for the number of staff you have. You know, you might not have enough staff to really manage all of these recommendations, and especially the ones like this one that are very time and person intensive. Because as soon as you begin to limit the abilities of people on workstations in an environment such as this, you do begin to limit how quickly people can adjust to new environments, like if they need to change printers suddenly, if they need to download an application to work with children in a classroom or to give a presentation. Sometimes some of these things will create some issues just at the same time that they're resolving some others.
So let me hit on one part that we emphasize, and this, now that we have your board chairman here and the superintendent here, a big part of the process, if you read the regulation, is we want once a year to where the district educates their local board on which best policies they're implementing or not implementing. We want you to do that ahead of time before an incident happens, because after an incident happens, people say, why didn't you do everything? Why didn't you force me to do everything, by the way? Just not, why didn't you do everything? Why didn't you force me? Even though they would have fought it with everything in their might to do probably 90% of them. So it's worth, we wanted to have that discussion. I'm going to be doing the same thing with the Kentucky Board of Education for K, the agency, of talking about which recommendations we're implementing and not implementing. Because anytime with security, there's a balance of risk with cost and being too cumbersome and frustrating for your customers. So part of it is with local administrator is one that stands out that we've gotten feedback over the years, is you have teachers that want to do things, and now they got to ask your technical staff for permissions and the rights to ability to load something. And unless you have a huge technical staff, you cannot be that responsive. I always say you got to have kind of like a small army of them of just being responsive to do that. And so what that does is it puts this technical staff in a very bad position. In fact, they become first we kind of look as an enemy of the teachers because they can't respond fast enough. And so while that is an excellent best practice, when you take a look at it with the risk that's involved, and you have to say how many really bad things have occurred because of the local administrator rights, and what would be the cost of putting that in place. But you need to have that discussion ahead of time, much like I will have with my state board, my equivalent of your board, about why we're not doing that, or why we are doing certain ones on here. So as Bob's pointing out, I really wanted to point out there are certain things that we have in the KD Best Practice Guide that are in the regulation. There are parts of it with the Audit of Public Accounts, they went beyond that. And not that those are bad recommendations, but you'll have to have a balance of that when you're talking with your board members about why you're doing it and not doing it. And we're really asking for you in the Go Soapbox to talk about why you are or not doing certain things here, because it does help us out at the KD level. And like I said, I try to mirror, for the most part, what districts do in policy. So be honest with you, I find that 95% of districts are doing local administrator. That may be time for us to do the same thing in KD, the agency. Bob, we did have a discussion about this particular topic, about these, I don't know if you said these operating systems are getting more powerful to where they're not as limiting as they used to be.
Correct. As Microsoft Windows and kind of increases the capabilities it puts in terms of adjusting and fine-tuning user control of the workstation, we may be able to look at a day sometime in the near future when we can remove some of the more dangerous permissions but still allow people to add printers, add software, stuff like that, or maybe do it in a way that while you're here it works, when you go somewhere else, those limitations grow a little bit. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and Microsoft understands that this is something that they definitely need to work on, and I believe they are, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. A couple other things that I wanted to throw out there. Again, David really touched on it really well, but we really would like to get feedback from you as to why you're not doing it, or if you have done it, how did it turn out, what was the broken glass if you have done it even on a small scale. And then kind of let us know, because not only, this isn't a yes or no sort of thing. At some point you may decide that you have enough time, energy, money, staff resources that this is something that you want to tackle. And, where would this be in your priority list? And that's something that every district needs to do with a lot of these recommendations, all of them. You need to prioritize them and start planning for this sort of stuff. The threats to your district aren't just going to go away, so you do need to begin planning for these things. And that's something else that you would want to talk to your board about and at least present to them. So here's what we're doing today. And there's a lot of stuff going on in a district. In every district in Kentucky, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of things going on that protect data. But we've been doing them for so long that we just don't really think about them anymore. Just for one example, web filtering, proxies, those sorts of things, that's an example of a security system here within the district. Product standards, that is an example of a security system, because if you have product standards, they're easier to defend. And so we all need to think about that. When we go and talk to our boards, it's not just, did we eliminate local administrative permissions on every workstation, but what are we doing for security to make things secure for children in any possible manner?
And in the best practice guide, the back page, I believe, talks about that barrier. Kentucky has, not to encourage any hackers to come after us, one of the best in the United States because of those product standards. We have one school information system, one financial management system, one network system, and not that it makes us totally immune, but definitely makes it much more difficult. I can tell you, and this is one of the discussion topics I had in Utah with my peers, is the biggest hole in this is not the technical one, it's the people one. Okay? So we're going to spend a lot of time and energy, and we need to make sure we provide a technical protective barrier. As I say, we just put a firewall upgrade across the state, the product standards. But simple things like your passwords is not making your password. That is one of the biggest holes that we have. When people come and go with the district, and this is across the United States, there's not a really good process to keep up with as people leave a district and making sure all their access privileges are removed for every system they had. And so what you find in a district is you have these accounts that are there for a long period of time. And those are prime targets, by the way, for hackers to come in and be looked at as that account, be seen as a resource within the district and a person within the district, and go undetected for long periods of time. So that's why you see us about the changing the passwords often, because if we don't have a good process to where we're really keeping good accountability of people when they leave an organization and the things they had access to, then changing the passwords more frequently does help protect that. So that's why you're seeing, as we talked about in the last webcast, moving to changing the state level system passwords every 4 months, because it does help protect those two different areas of something that they can go undetected for a long period of time. So the main piece of this that I found out from my peers is the training and a culture of security within your organization. And so you can have these things down, but it's tough. I know it is, because my daughter's a teacher, to say security is important. But I tell you what, when it goes all bad, it becomes really important. It's kind of like when you go through security at an airport. You try to go around that and get busted, that's not a good experience, right? I mean, it is kind of a hassle going through that and taking everything out, and then you have something buzzing saying, what's that, and pulling that back out. But you try to go around that process, that's a really bad experience for you, because it puts everyone kind of at risk when you see that happening, just not that person. So I would say we're spending a lot of time on the technical side, but just as big is this, and in your planning, Carla, I would just recommend that somehow it's just not a 2-hour training, but it's got to be more so part of discussions about really important things you're doing with security. So it's just not, I just went to this training and that's it, trying to work it in. So that's my words of wisdom for you, at least at the national level.
And teaching has become one of the most technologically intensive professions, I guess, in the country, with SITs and all the other data that we handle. Most of us have had a pretty bad experience with a recent Anthem breach, so we get it.
Yeah.
But the number of the proxies and everything else does slow the process down a bit. It can become cumbersome, but we know the risk of not having that in place. Yeah. We really.
And one thing that we think about data security and privacy internally, but what House Bill 5 and House Bill 241 last year really expanded that is that our agreements with our vendor partners have to have those provisions in them. So that makes us take a look at the terms of agreement we're entering into and in agreements we have in place. Now, it did say that any new agreements had to be entered into, so if you've got an standing one But there's certain FERPA provisions as well as House Bill 5 and House Bill 241 provisions that have to be worked into our agreements. And we've talked about that numerous times.
At length, exactly,
and,
yes.
I'll just remind folks that we did update our memorandums of understanding on the KDE website on the data request page. So if you don't have something, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, just tweak what we've got done for you.
That's right, and there's a copy, Dee Dee, in the data breach best practice guide as well. The documents that KDE uses that we put in our contracts are pretty much word for word in that best practice guide. You can take them, and I've kind of taken KDE out and stuck district in there and highlighted it just so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then you can add to that if you want, which I think is important. But something else I'd say very important about this when you're working with vendors, and again, we could talk for hours on this stuff, is that, this isn't KDE saying that vendors have to do this. This isn't this district. This isn't Adair County saying vendors have to do this. These are Kentucky laws now. And so vendors really need to become more cognizant of the laws here in Kentucky and whether or not these are laws that they're willing to accept at this point and play with and work and do business here in the state of Kentucky or not. But they also need to keep in mind that California, right on the heels of Kentucky, passed very similar laws. Some other states up in the Northeast have also just passed very similar laws. So this isn't a Kentucky way out on the branch sort of thing.
Yeah, once again, this was a topic that we talked about in Utah, and definitely our wording is very similar. Now, we're the first state to do a best practice guide. So you're going to see just states, and I'm fine with it, do a copy paste of ours, which is fine to do. But they did have to go through a process of having regulation put in place for data breaches and cloud-based computing. Now, what superintendents did tell us about, and the local superintendent's advisory council talked about, is they're spending a lot of legal time going through these contracts. So at the state level, obviously, we're doing that. We're doing it for Munis, Infinite Campus, and all the big ones. But you use a lot of products that we don't have at the state level, especially a lot of instructional ones. And so that takes time, your legal staff's time going with the company's legal staff time going back and forth. And so one of the questions was, is there kind of a clearinghouse of someone that's gone through that effort? And that's not a role Katie's playing. Perhaps it's a role one of the Kentucky cooperatives can play. But I also brought it up nationally. You're going to see, because this is a national issue, it's just not Kentucky, you're going to see a lot of these vendors start working on the language themselves, because California, Northeast states, there's a lot of ones in the southern states have gone in this direction as well. So it's not an uphill battle just for Kentucky. So you're going to see some movement with that. But I just know a lot of lawyer time is being spent going back and forth locally within districts. And so we're going to approach, cooperatives to see if someone will play that clearinghouse role. We'll report some of the associations with they'll play that role. I don't know if they will or not. So if you have recommendations, and I didn't want to mention that on this webcast, of an organization you think we should approach that will play this clearinghouse role for you, let us know, and then we'll approach them.
David, I have a couple more things if I can go ahead and go through. Back to the administrative reg that the Department of Education is producing. This was essentially approved. It'll be approved formally and be posted, I think, on the 21st of September. And between now and then, you'll begin to see some changes on the KD website. But I wanted to hit a couple of things, just in case people haven't gotten the word yet, that are in the reg that I think we need to make sure we focus on. David, you've already talked about one of them, and that is that KDE and districts need to be getting the word to their boards about what they're doing, what they're not doing with data security. But one of the other things that the reg does require, and it's a bit of a change from House Bill 5, is that in the reg we specify that districts will utilize essentially a distribution list. They'll follow the guide, the best practice guide, and it has a distribution list in it. And that was a recommendation from districts when we were first doing a lot of these webcasts. They said, don't give us the names of the people we need to contact in case of a data breach. Give us a distribution list so we can just click on that. And so that's something that we've done. And so instead of notifying each of these state agencies one by one, you can just click the distribution list, and that will get that ball rolling, and you don't really have to know if you have the latest name for the Commissioner for State of Police, for example, or COT's Commissioner, that sort of thing. And so that's something we did in response to districts, and I think it makes perfect sense. let's see here. And then I think the last thing, the KD website, as I mentioned, is going to be getting a few changes around that web page regarding data security and notifications. One, we had a request to put the definition for PII out there where it was more accessible, so you wouldn't have to go digging through the House Bill 5 or the legislation resulting from that.
So this was from Superintendent Hawkins at Whitford County. He said that it would really be nice for teachers on a one-page or someplace, even though it's in the law. Not the law around the House Bill 5 was 21 pages. Mm-hmm. So we basically taken 21 pages and put it into one page in the best practice guide about what you got to do with the breach. The other pages in it are how to the protection. But Superintendent Hawkins thought it'd be a good idea as far as you're trying to educate teachers, administrators, what is really sensitive and what is not. And typically it's stuff an open records request you can't get, but there's a good listing in the law that talks about that, right? Exactly, and we'll have that right on the web page, right where that data breach best practice guide is kept. The second thing out of three, the data breach best practice guide was incorporated via reference into the reg, and that means it's going to be much more difficult to make changes to that reg. As we all know, technology changes very quickly. Threats to our data and to our schools also can change on a dime, and so we need to be able to have a way to edit that document or to produce and post out there updates to that guide. And so we're going to put something right up there with it, right up very close, where we'll be putting upcoming changes to the guide or updates to it. So they're not going to be housed in 3 web pages away. They're going to be right there with it. And you'll know that at some point when we update, which takes like 3 months, when we update the KAR, we'll be going in and integrating those items with it, which is something we need to keep in mind. And then there's been a lot of conversation regarding student identifiers, the SSID, whether that is confidential information or not. It kind of depends on how it's used, and I want to go ahead and say this, and we've got some verbiage that we'll post out on the KD website as well. This is the third thing out of 3, then I'll be quiet. And that is that if the SSID is being used as it was proposed to be used, as a unique identifier with no other abilities, nothing else tied to it, we believe it's okay if it's shared internally to help with school processes. It's still not great to share that publicly. But as soon as that SSID begins to be used for other purposes, such as usernames, passwords, that sort of thing, then it becomes a multi-use ID. It allows access to student data because of that. And there could be some issues with sharing it broadly. So just kind of keep that in mind. Again, we have some verbiage for that will stick out on the KD website that I think will help folks out.
Just to add to that, I mean, when we get emails for my team that get emails for assistance for maybe an infant campus issue or something they're trying to figure out for a student, just send us the SSID. Don't send us their name, what all the, explain the issue, but don't give us any more details of the student, because that email is not typically encrypted when we get it. So that helps keep that information safe.
Absolutely. Send the least amount of information you can when working with students. And David? Go ahead.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I won't tell you what state this happened to, but with their staff, they spend a lot of time on the technical side, securing the site. So we hire someone to try to purposely try to get into our system internally and externally. So the Auditor of Public Accounts already does that, but we do that within KD as well. So this state did the same thing. And what they found is technically they were secured. So what they did is they sent an email to all the staff, this outside firm, posing that they run the parking lot. So what they did is said, everybody's going to get new parking assignments. Go ahead and send us your username and password so we can assign you a new parking assignment. So even though this site was so secure technically, 90% of their staff sent them their username and password about parking spots. Okay, so a lot of what these folks do in this game is they take advantage of people's good nature. Okay, that's what it is. And so I always give people that kiddingly what the Department of Education is. We have a code and we have a card that slides in. If someone walks in that doesn't have that, I know it seems rude, but if I don't know that person, I don't let them in. And I know that's an awkward kind of position. People say, well, it's awkward for me to do that. That's how social engineering works. They take advantage of that kind of stuff. And so I encourage you with your staff to make sure they get onto the gaming and the scamming side of this and they're getting a whole lot smarter. They're not going, there's a prince in some foreign country that wants your money. Is they're really coming close to finding out and spoofing real email addresses, and it seems really convincing. But really, in no circumstances should you be giving username and passwords, and just try to give that to your staff. It's okay not to get it. The technical staff is not asking for it. The requirements of the regulation are by next August, and it's in there every August. You don't have to wait till July, by the way. Is you have to have that discussion with your board. So it says you go through the best practice guide, consider which ones you're doing and not doing, and have the discussion with your board why you're doing them and not doing them. This is not something KDHC is going to come down and inspect. But this is what happens when you do have an incident that happens. Someone's going to say, hey, there's a law that says you're supposed to go through this. And so you probably want to have some kind of discussion in your board notes where you did talk about it, and you probably want to remind your board members what they agreed to and didn't agree to. Because when it goes bad, I'm telling you, having experienced this at different levels, is they're wondering why you didn't do everything. Even though that may cost $10 billion to do 10 of those recommendations, they're wondering why you didn't do it. So this is a way to get ahead in that discussion. The other part I would say, let's see the results of the survey, if we could bring those up, about the local administrator rights. This is what I saw earlier was pretty interesting, is a pretty dramatic change to what it was before. So we asked this question a year ago. I want to say it was 90% that said they were not going to implement local administrator rights. And look how time has changed this. So it's pretty close. Now here's my words of warning for you, for all your technology staffs. Make sure you have a discussion with your superintendent and your boards before you do this, because teachers are going to scream. And make sure you have the backing of your superintendent and your local board. This is not a decision you're making on your own. You feel it's the right thing to do. Because when they start screaming about not getting to things, that's you. So make sure you're having this real good discussion about what it means to lock it down, local administrator rights. What does it mean what does it mean for the teacher experience? What does it mean for the student experience? What does it mean for the administrator experience? I'm not saying that's not a good thing, but this is something in K-12, unlike any other industry, is something where you have a lot of pushback by your end customers. And so really make sure before you go down this path, even though it's the one recommended and it is the best, it is a best practice. When you go to the extreme of things, it is a best practice. But can you really implement that with the organization without getting the beat down? And so that is interesting. It's tightened up that much. I just want to make sure you have, given that's just been a year difference, you really have the support. And you don't have to explain it in non-technical terms to your superintendent, your board meeting, what it means to do this. And what kind of experience it's going to be for a teacher. And as you say, Bob, maybe the tools have gotten better where the technology staff does not have to be involved with every step of the way. Because that was really the problem associated with this before. Any kind of minor change, you had to get the technology staff involved to do it. And typically they're so tremendously understaffed they can't keep up with it. Not that they don't want to do it, but they just can't keep up with it. So really make sure you have the right staffing to do it, and maybe you have the right staffing to keep up with it. And make sure you have the support of your board and of your superintendent before you go down that path. Any other things that come up from that discussion that we want to hit on before we go on to the next topic that you saw is rising up? Because I know there was a discussion topic. Anything else that we saw from the Go Soapbox?
There's some great discussion out there, David, okay, behind that question on how people are speaking to this. No, right. Great discussion.
And David, I just want to thank everyone out there, because I know nobody has the job to be the security guy almost out in school districts. And so anytime you're thinking about security, whether you're a teacher, administrator, a tech person, I want to thank you, the security guys at KD, thank you, the students whose data you're handling. They don't even know about it, but they're thanking you, or they will thank you at some point. It really means a lot every time you don't put your password on a Post-it note on your monitor. That's a win, a huge, huge win. And so I just want to thank everyone for everything you do, no matter how small it is. It makes a difference. So thanks.
Some of these districts are doing some really big things. I've talked to a few that are collecting terms of agreement. They're reviewing those. They're finding out what apps are being used, and they're really, going to, a great deal of work to be able to make sure they're doing things right.
And I'll do this too, Bob. I know you have daughters, guys and girls, right? They're involved with leading the security effort. So thanks for everyone's effort there. So Mike, this circles back, and I'll let you have start the discussion with the technology activity report and its importance that it plays. And Carlos here ready to answer your questions.
Well, we got a lot of questions for her. As David kind of alluded to earlier on, we want to have some discussion around the technology activity report. This is the time of year where we are expecting those to come into us. Those are something that are a requirement for us to issue CATS offers of assistance to school districts. So that obviously makes a pretty big connection with the districts and the importance from that perspective. But the other part that we want to remind everybody is the importance of the actual information that we have contained within those and how we use that. And some challenges that we're continuing to see about what we're getting in those activity reports, and potentially some missing information or inaccurate information. The easiest example to use is that we use that information along with other information such as the technology readiness survey, and again some other information, school report card, as we work with legislature and other folks around funding for education technology specifically. And it's used regularly throughout the year, but specifically whenever we have a budget legislative session, which is coming up. It's information that we go to on a regular basis. And I know we've had that conversation multiple times, and it's not limited to that, but that is a very easy, significant example to use.
I'd add one also, Mike, is the Kentucky Board of Education. I have to present that every year. I look at the technology readiness survey that we're going to talk about as well, but also the technology activity report of where the money is going. So by law, I report on that every year, typically in the June timeframe. So I'm counting on that as being accurate as possible.
So again, that's kind of a reminder of that, and we've had that discussion many times, I know. But I also know that sometimes if you're in a position to be a provider of information and data, but you're not actually necessarily a recipient of how it's used and so forth, it's difficult to make that connection. However, we do highly recommend districts utilize this information as well, obviously within your own districts and with your own Board of Educations and so forth, and your leadership as you make decisions and do your planning and how you utilize and implement your technology. So that's just a reminder of that. So last spring at the CIO Summit, we had a fairly intense or dedicated topic to commodity codes, which is the codes that are used within the munis financial system that allow us to track how technology funds are utilized. Anything, not just technology funds, any funds that are utilized toward technology-related items. And, for a while now, we've been getting a lot of feedback about this. It's complicated. It's difficult to use all these commodity codes and know how to code things. And so we went through an effort to try to capture not only feedback about what are those challenges and how can we try to make improvements so that, again, we can end up with accurate and complete information when it comes to the activity reports, the technology activity reports, but also are there some things we can do as far as to ease the widespread of complexity of it, and specifically speaking to the number of commodity codes. So we reduced that tremendously, and I don't remember what the number was. Maybe one of you guys remember exactly what it was, but it was it's 20-something, and it was 200 and something. So that was an effort to make this a more simple process to be able to be done, to be able to code things so that we've got a representation of the dollars that are being spent on technology-related items. So with that being done, we anticipated whenever we started getting technology activity reports in that we would see more complete and accurate information. And while we do have many districts that are doing this very well, and we would say that we get reports and they look to be very complete, we see information in all the categories that we think that we would, and three easy ones, and it's the same ones that we've always talked about that always seem to be complicated, are munis, infinite campus, and salary-related items. Those are always the ones that seem to be where we see a lot of gaps and things that don't appear to be being accounted for in the activity report, but yet they're still important to us to be able to speak to. It's not limited to that, but those are three that always stand out. And while we have many that are doing a very good job, we do still have a very high measurable number that appear to be inaccurate or missing information. So really the discussion here, and I do want to remind folks that we've got a question out on the Go Soapbox, which is about how many CIOs actually review that TAR report before it's submitted. And we also have a discussion topic, which is, what are the challenges, what are the struggles.
It might looks like about 83% when I last looked at it. Looks like they're part of that process of reviewing.
Yeah,
so
and
somewhere in there.
Yeah, we'll we'll look at that in just a second to see where it's at. So while we're talking, make sure you are inputting information into that. But so the discussion is just that. It's around how can we help improve this, because our goal was to make this easier, less complicated for the districts, whoever staff is involved, which we know you've got finance officer involved in this kind of an activity. You've got those that are actually inputting the data, your clerks or whoever it is that inputs the information off of POs or makes payment to invoices, and then your the CIO obviously should be involved as well. And so we really need that feedback because, again, we want to make this easier, we want to make it more accurate, and we don't want to have to go through a process, which we will be doing this year again, which is that several districts are going to get an email back from either Scott Kane or Ann Rothenberger, who are our folks that handle these coming in and handle the initiating the offers of assistance, as well as a call or a visit, some kind of communication from your KE about we're seeing things on your report that does not appear to be either complete or accurate. And we needed to be responsive to that because we are intending to hold districts accountable to provide us with a complete and accurate report. So I would say this year we understand that we're going to have to work through that again, and we're going to have to allow the districts to provide us with some kind of additional information, an explanation, or something that allows us to have something complete. But our goal will be for the upcoming year to really, avoid having to go through that back and forth to figure that out for, again, a fairly large number of districts. So that's kind of the conversation. That's kind of what we're wanting to discuss. I am going to ask Carla. I mean, like as an example, are you, whenever your all's technology activity report is generated and submitted out of the Munis financial system, is that something that you're in a position to where it comes through you to review that in some way or another, or it may be something that you haven't even really thought about and need to do that?
Yes, my finance director, Renee Smith, and I do work together on that, and she's wonderful to check with me. I think it really helps me because I approve all purchases. Another reason is to make sure I get that correct commodity code on there because I know that down the road we're going to need that to show up on that TAR report, so that's kind of how we handle it.
Yeah. Now, it kind of goes back to you're involved in all purchases because I do hear, and I've gotten the feedback that there is still a lot of scenarios where you have purchases that are occurring, whether it's at the school level, not the district level, or whatever the scenario is, where the CIO, one, is not aware and involved in those purchases being made, which, again, that's kind of a district thing that you want to have a handle on how you do that. But then also that they're really not necessarily going through the Munis financial system and they don't have the opportunity to be coded, which is obviously even a bigger issue. So like for you, it sounds like you would identify that something that helps you be able to have and know that when it comes time for that technology activity report to be generated, that one, you're involved in those purchases as they're being made and you're aware of them, but yet that they also are going through the Munis financial system as far as the way they're done.
Even though it's more work for me up front, I'd much rather do that because it does help with our accuracy.
Now, are you able to utilize that information yourself as you all think ahead, make decisions, or have any kind of strategy thoughts on what you're doing?
We do, and we probably will more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can just tell you from my point of view, as I'm presenting to the legislature, as I'm presenting to the state board, it affects my credibility not having accurate information. And so we're going to get really hardcore on it this year. For the first CATS offer of assistance, we're not going to this year give an offer of assistance officially until we think that number is right. So it'll probably help you get some leverage within your district that maybe people are not cooperating with you. On you trying to get that, I am trying to force that process to start happening, where you're you're looking at those reports, you're questioning, because a big part of data accuracy, and we spent a whole lot of time on a report I told you a little bit about a year ago about data quality, is the inspection piece at the local district level. If it has zeros in it, like from Munis and Infinite Campus, you know that should not be zeros. You're spending money on that. That is with a certainty. So when we see zeros there, we know something is really wrong. And also just take a look at, does the number make sense? Even if it's filled with something, does the number make sense? And we're counting on that to occur at the local level. And I'm counting on that to roll up accurately from 173 districts. So it looks like, from the best of the data we have, 50% of you have found a way to do that. 50% of you have not. And so if it was 90%, I'd say the system's totally broke, but 50% are entering that stuff in. So it's either a breakdown at the data entry level, whoever's entering that in, it's a breakdown at the inspection level at the local district, but I have to have that fixed. because it does affect my credibility and our department's credibility of trying to present a certain position of needing money and where the money is going if I can't present that. So our part of the deal was we reduced the commodity codes from 200 to 20. Now it's your turn to help us make sure that data is accurate. And so we're going to take some steps about withholding money, which typically does a good job of motivating people. We really don't like to always do that. But in this case, to start cleaning it up is we're going to start taking that action. And so, Mike's involved with that. He's briefed me. So you're going to see his part of his staff. You're going to see the KE's part of the staff. And to be honest with you, some of you want this. You want it because you're not part of the discussion. You're not part of the purchases. And it helps you stick your nose into certain areas with your chief financial officer. And we've had discussions with our chief financial officer at the KD level to make sure they understand our CIOs at the district level are going to start asking questions about this, and they got to be part of that discussion. Mike, any other key parts you want to bring up?
Well, I just want to mention, and we've heard about the challenge of whether you're generating a PO or not specifically for the purchase versus just doing an invoice. And I think that's usually a salary-related kind of conversation. Sometimes it may be related to some predetermined things that you're going to be purchasing, making payments on, such as Infinite Campus. And so we need to understand those better. I'm going to be working more, again, with our Finance and Administration Office about, to ensure that we're communicating with the finance officers on this ongoing need that we have to improve this area, as well as are there additional things we can do to make this work more easily and to be, something that we can have more accuracy on? So those are a couple of more things we're doing. I just want to real quickly, David, look at the poll on the. It looks like a high percentage of CIOs are looking at the TAR report in some way or another before it's being submitted, which I suppose I would look at two ways. That's one, a good thing, but two, that would be a bigger concern about why it may not be as accurate as it needs to be. So if you're looking at it, make sure if it doesn't look good that you're doing something about it, which actually takes me to my last point, which is do get involved in this. Don't look at it, because I will get feedback a lot of times about, well, this is a finance issue. Finance officers need to fix this. Well, while you as the CIO may not be the one that directly handles how purchasing occurs and is handled in the financial system and so forth, you as a technology leader are the recipient of what this report represents. And so if you don't feel like you get involved with it, go knock on your finance officer's door or and say, hey, let's talk about this. How can we make this better? Because sometimes that's just the way we got to handle it. So I encourage you to do that.
Mike, a nice lead in for our first CATS offers. We talk about what you got to do to get that. Yeah.
So the first offers, as we've mentioned, will be going out, and I say going out on September the 15th. September 15th is the cutoff date for us to receive the technology activity report and the signature page that is required to accompany that. And those offers will go out beginning immediately after that. So, really the dates to identify will be within 1 to 2 weeks following September 15th, you should receive your first CATS offers of assistance. If you do not have that information into us by September the 15th, then you will be going through the second round of offers of assistance, which will be December the 15th. First offers will be $9 per ADA. The second offer will be $8 per ADA. And if you wait, if you're not able to be a part of that first offer, you will be automatically the next offer, the next timing will be for the second one, and you would receive both of those at the same time if that would be the case. And again, the third offer is tentatively scheduled for March 15th, will be the cutoff date. And again, if you wait until then, you would be receiving all three of your offers, first, second, and third offers, in that March time frame. So again, we've talked about that a few different times, so I really hope that we don't have a whole lot of people going, I'm surprised by that, I didn't know anything about it. But we're on target for that first offer, $9 per ADA, to be available to go out beginning September 15th for those districts that have provided us that information. And be looking for, or don't be looking for, hopefully you feel confident you won't be getting, but if you do receive an email communication, and again, direct contact from your KE saying, hey, something about your TAR report looks funny to us, right this year at minimum, we need some kind of explanation, something to where we can make some kind of correction, whether you make the correction or whether we do something to make the correction. We're going to work with you a little bit again this year on how we do that, but we do want to have something that clarifies and explains, and so that we've got accurate information.
Yep.
So David, real quick, we have some phenomenal feedback out on Go Soapbox regarding this entire conversation, back behind that question we asked about the TAR report.
Yeah.
So we've got some great input from our ed tech leaders on some of those challenges that they're faced with.
Good.
That I think are really going to help us as we move forward in resolving some of those issues.
Good, thank you. So Dee, let's move on to the Chief Data Officer update.
All right. Well, right now we're in the middle of a lot of data review. So we're wrapping up the civil rights data collection, and I think everybody knows that the due date on that is going to be the 21st. It will not be extended further for all Kentucky schools, but if there is a problem with being able to meet that time frame, they have provided a request process out on their website. At this point, there's not a lot that Kentucky Department of Education can help with. We still get a lot of calls. Unfortunately, we have to refer them back to the CRDC, and I'm sure they're getting calls from all over the nation, and they're not always as responsive as you'd like, but we cannot see the same data that you see, so we are limited as far as what we can do to help. We're able to provide a lot of the data this year, and that was the first time. The feedback I've gotten so far has been that's been great. We want to continue doing it, but if you feel differently, we want to hear feedback from all of our districts to make sure we make a good decision going forward, because we will do another civil rights data collection for 15-16. So this time next year we'll be doing it all over again. Everybody's excited about that, I'm sure. So the other data we're validating right now is school report card. School report card has been released in the secure site. Hopefully we all are aware of that. What that means is there's 2 tabs that are open right now. Learning environment, which includes a lot of student data. It's got the safety data. The safety time frame is already passed. It was due last Friday. And the reason that one's earlier is because we do have to submit that data to the Kentucky Center for School Safeties and the Office of Education Accountability by the end of this month. So it will be submitted. Hopefully it has been reviewed and you're comfortable with that, because it's very difficult for us to change that after those dates. The other learning environment items that will be wrapping up by the middle of this month, the 14th I think is the date, will be the last date for verification of those data. And we really do that so that we can, I said the 14th, the 4th of September, it was what the extension date was. We really do that so that after that part, the learning environment tab is considered done. And we move on to the assessment and accountability, which requires a lot of review, and the delivery tabs and program review tabs. And we open those where we're done with the one part. So much of the learning environment tabs are counts like membership. If they're wrong, it's going to just exasperate us through you go to the card, because we're calculating percentages and things like that on those numbers, so we need to make sure those are correct. We will have one more new tab this year. The superintendent's got notice on that, I think yesterday, that the new equity tab will be loaded to the school report card. It'll be in the learning environment tab, and what that is about the equity measures that Kentucky has agreed to with the Federal Department of Education, Race to the Top measures. It will include the TEL data. It will include the overall effectiveness of growth and overall effectiveness for teachers and leaders. It also includes the percentage of new teachers and K-TIP teachers in each of the schools. And it will include a teacher turnover calculation that will be the first time we've calculated that. That calculation is being made from Infinite Campus. And I will be the first to say, as we look into this data, there are a lot of data anomalies. There are just different ways different schools do things. It's not necessarily wrong. It's just not consistent. So when we try to do a state calculation like this, you're going to find some things that you don't think are right. I mean, we've had some great feedback from our districts on things that just don't look quite right. This will be a learning year. It's the first year that it's being calculated. We've got, you might have one teacher that just moves along with a student, and when that student goes from middle school to high school, and this teacher goes along with them, that becomes teacher turnover. Probably not what we really consider to be teacher turnover, but when you've got a system that's calculating the data, we can't figure all those different pieces out. So we'll be taking a look at that and getting some feedback on those. Right now, it's not released, but if you're interested in the teacher turnover data, there is a report in Infinite Campus. You get a kind of a highlight if you want to look at it now, just to kind of see what's being calculated. It was with the last release. It was available on Thursday, You'd have to get your system administrator to give you access to it, but it can be run at the school and district level to kind of get a feel for what your turnover number is going to look like.
So as I can recall, Dee Dee, for that equity tab, teacher equity tab, a good number of it is already being pulled from existing resources,
Right.
the TEL survey. The only thing that was different, as I can recall, is the teacher turnover, but that's not a new data element that districts had to fill in. We're just taking stuff they already fill in
Right.
and doing this plus this divided by this minus this equals the teacher turnover.
Right.
So it's not something new. We're taking advantage, but what it does, usually when we do this, there are certain things you're filling out. You say, I never thought you were using it, and you're going to see it's going to help clean it up for the next year. So that's why these certain things are brought out. But you know, I guess the emphasis behind all this is, do we have, does everybody have, access to good teachers across their district? Is it equitable? And when you have tremendous turnover, you're kind of wondering why that's happening. And then also when you're replacing them, especially when you have districts that have some academic issues, are they all brand new teachers?
Right.
A very high percentage of them. And so that usually that form is not good. So this is just, every state has to do this as part of their federal reporting. I do think it's a good thing. But this one's a new thing. The rest of it is pretty clear that the teacher turnover was a new formula.
And nobody's making an indication that this percentage is good or bad. It is what it is. The numbers that we're looking at are teachers that are working with students. So it might be that you have people that you wouldn't have even thought would be in the calculation there. But I think what David mentions is very accurate, that if you have turnover for long periods of time, that's probably not necessarily good. But if you have high turnover 1 year because you had a bunch of retirements, that's not necessarily bad. So,
Or you have a superintendent comes in and says, these are our new standards, pretty hard charging, and you have some that exit. But if you see that over a long period of time, by the way, we work with the program offices in KD, so this is not something Office of Kids said. We came up with a formula of teacher turnover.
Right.
So this is the Office of Next Generation Learners who it should be determining who that is, and we work with all of them on doing that.
And as far as the numerator and denominator, the percentage calculation is obviously pretty easy. Figuring out who should be in that numerator and denominator is much more difficult out of Infinite Campus. So, we're really looking at the baseline as the teachers that you had in your school as of the end of the 13-14 school year. And that becomes, and those are teachers that are working with students that are assigned to courses and sections. If they leave in they don't come back the following year, or they leave during the next year, or you have a new teacher that comes in that second year, or 14-15, and leaves after 100 days, that's where you're getting your turnover numbers. So a lot of information will come out with that. You can get a sneak peek if you want to take a look at it. We will be helping with questions, but Dave is right. We are not the experts on any of these equities. This is not ours. We're just trying to help the program area make sure it gets put in the school report card the way they've selected to do it. Moving on from there, we've got Infinite Campus, a new school year. We've got new data standards. Some of those are still being created. The special education one is one that comes to mind. That is a huge data standard and a lot of changes for this year. I think it's 130 pages long. It's awful. But there's just a lot of specific requirements for special education. As those get updated with any significant changes, we will send a notice out to make sure you're aware of those. We won't just sneak them in. But we do know that those are coming out. But special education, for instance, has done a lot of training in the special education administration across the state. We did have some new training availability. We've got fall user group meetings that have been scheduled. Look at the KSIS training page, KSIS training. And if you want to search our website, we'll have the week of September 29th and October the 9th that Infinite Campus will come into the state and do training at various sites. We usually go out, my team usually goes out and tries to attend every single one of them and bring a little bit of an update. If there's something you'd like to see, don't ever hesitate to ask, and we'll try to prepare accordingly. But that is something that is coming up. We have some new reports available. We've got a custom assessment report. If you've got interest in just the number of your assessments and how your students did, it aggregates that data somewhat similar to school report card. While we can't get it exactly the same because of accountability, it does kind of give you an idea of how your different subgroups have done on different assessments. So you can run that. Early graduation report. We still struggle a little bit with the early graduation and making sure the students are coded correctly. But you can get some information on those students that have been selected and how they're doing to make sure that they actually meet the conditions of the early graduate program. And then teacher turnover, I've already mentioned.
By the way, the state of Nevada is going completely to Infinite Campus. They announced that during our meeting in Utah. So there's another state that we'll be having communications with a statewide implementation.
Right. A few things with the continuous instructional improvement technology system. This is a good time to take a look. We provided a reminder in the last newsletter that you should take a look and make sure the people that had access really still needed access. If they're leaving, obviously, end date them so that they don't continue to have access in Infinite Campus or SITS. But at the same time, this is a good time to check the roles and permissions that people have in SITS to make sure that they are still applicable. If people change positions, they may need more permissions or they may need less permissions.
So just so you know, this is the time of the year we get screams about I can't see certain data elements. I'm in SIT, and it comes down to they're not set up correctly in Infinite Campus, therefore they're not set up correctly in SIT, so they've changed the role. Maybe it was a teacher at one school that they could see this many students, but they've changed their role, or you have, well, let's change roles. So this is where we usually hear the screams, and this is people related. It's not the system's broke. It's got to be entered correctly. And always beginning of the year we run into this. So when we hear the screams, we're going to circle them right back to you.
Right. And there is a report in Infinite Campus that allows you to run it. I would suggest go ahead and run it, provide it to teacher or principals. Just have them take a look and make sure they're still applicable. I think that's a good beginning of the year practice. If you don't know where that report is, it was in the last newsletter article, Cases newsletter. You can find an article that has the pathway to that. Mentioning Google Training, the site for SITS. If you're not aware, everything has transferred to a new site. Please, take advantage of that. There's a lot of good resources there. The SITS KDE website's been updated, so check there. We're continuing to add additional materials. We have, if you've got new teachers that need help and there's something we can do, reach out to us because we have created some resources, even encouraging the Ed Prep programs to take advantage of some Infinite Campus and some SITS training. On the August 7th, districts did receive a survey about use of SITS, and districts were asked to respond by the August 14th. If you've not gotten a chance to do that, please do so and contact Marita Horn if you have any questions. We did do some training last month, and if you didn't have an opportunity to do participate in the cases training, which did include both Infinite Campus topics as well as SITS topics, all that information all those training has been recorded. It's been broken apart into sections, so if you see that somebody's interested in just one piece of it, you can watch one piece. You can see the Q&As that came about through that training. It was a big training. We had 244 registered participants. It was 2 days long, and for those of you that hung with us for 2 days, it seemed like 2 years, 2 days, thank you, but it is always effective, and we've got another training that will come up mid-year. Right now we're just scheduling the date, so just kind of remind staff to to watch for those dates and put that, and all this information is on the cases training site, so we try to keep those pages updated and make sure they're relevant for you, so again, feedback's welcome.
Just a point that we have 29 districts that decided not to use the Educational Development Suite EDS within SITS, and so right now we've picked a tentative time frame of September the 18th for those districts that have made that choice to go ahead and get your data out in whatever format you want to do, electronic or print it out, because around September the 18th for those 29 districts we'll be turning off the EDS part of SITS. So it's not for all districts. I want to emphasize that 10 times. I don't want to say it 10 times in a row. It's not for all. But if you're one of the 29 districts, our target date is the 18th of September to transition whatever you have in the EDS module, not IMS, the Instructional Management System, but the Educational Development Suite, over to whatever tool you'll be using or mechanism be using to do the Educational Development Suite equivalent within your district.
And that will have some provisions for student voice and other things too that we'll get more information out on the impacts there as we have it, probably for the next webcast.
Yeah. Phil, Chief Technology Officer, update.
Well, David and Carla and her crew here in Adair County, it's been a busy summer from a technology perspective. We've already talked about a lot of things that have gone on. The firewall upgrades we completed this summer, the network upgrades to 100 kilobits per second for every student, and we began to deploy the new internet management system. There's kind of been a lot of other things kind of going on too, kind of in the background. The Munis upgrades, we're moving to 10.5, so I know that it doesn't directly impact the technology staff in most cases, but you're aware of it. So we have 160 school districts that we've completed that upgrade for, and we're You'd have those complete in the next couple of months for all 173 school districts. So as you know, the beginning of the school year is always a busy time for you guys. It's a busy time for us. But it's also a busy time for some other people, like these guys that are doing these DDoS attacks. And every year for the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen an upswing, an uptick in that. In fact, we actually had one start about 5 minutes before the webcast this morning with a very large school district. And so we've been working with our DDoS mitigation provider to get that kind of under control. But we've seen a kind of a big uptick in that, and we did last year, and we expect that to last for a while at the beginning of the school, almost every school year. In order to accommodate the work that goes on with the technology crew, we have these Windows updates that come out at the beginning of every month, so we kind of postpone those. And just as a reminder, those are due to be pushed out tomorrow. So we did postpone those for a couple of weeks, and to give you all some breathing room on that. But they are due to be released tomorrow. We have we also completed the transition from Avaya to SDG Blue in what we call our network monitoring and firewall support services. You probably didn't see any, transition, issues from our perspective. But what you will see in the future are some increased communications on kind of what goes on between, now you get a notice that says, okay, my network's down, and then you get another notice, hopefully very soon, that says your network's up. We're going to be providing a lot of information in between there, so look for that. And SDG's been working with us to provide some tools, and hopefully in the very near future we'll be able to get you some of those, and you'll be able to see kind of what's going on with your network and going on behind the scenes when you have a network outage. And even when you don't have a network outage, you can kind of see some performance issues. So we're anxious to get that to you pretty soon. Also this fall we're going to be implementing a new VPN service. The current VPN service, as you know, only works on Windows machines. The new VPN service will work on all platforms, iOS, Apple, Linux, the Google platforms, and so on. So be looking for that. Also, with that new VPN service is going to come some new security concerns. So we'll have some probably new procedures and some new policies that wrap around that, and Bob and I'll be working on that in the very, very near future. The last thing I kind of want to mention is the Munis Disaster Recovery Day. What we're calling that an event that will happen sometime in the very 1st of November. We've not actually picked a date on it, but you'll start hearing some more communications about that. And basically, what will happen is the Munis site will go down in Maine, and we will swing the service over to the disaster recovery site in Texas. Every school district will actually be participating in that, and we'll see that actually happen, and they will be able to test their, and see their data in Texas also. So there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes on that, and we'll have more information on that as it gets closer through a lot of different channels. The idea is not to really disrupt the work of the Munis people and the finance officers in the school district, because we know that's a very important job. So it'll be a kind of a short outage, but it'll be one that we do at a specific time. They'll do some testing to make sure it works. They know how to do that if it happens for real, and then we'll swing back to the main site and then work and continue.
Yeah, we don't want to wait till it actually happens before.
No, so we want to test it and make sure it works. So it's always something we like to do.
Mike, on the survey results, I saw that looks like 83% are going to take advantage of the first offer. We didn't circle back to that one. And just a quick reminder about the technology activity report. I told you about how important that is. 30 September is the time frame that we're going to get that in. What update can you give about the IDU bid?
Let me clarify. You said the TAR report. The technology readiness report is September 30th.
That's right. Yeah.
So on the technology readiness report, the due date is September 30th. Keep in mind, in the past several years, that's been in December, so that is moved up. It's always been our desire for that to be moved up. There was a variety of reasons it was later. One of the most significant reasons was we wanted to have the most up-to-date and accurate information we could, as long as we could, to help us with budget conversations and so forth.
And to help out the new ed tech leaders, this is something probably 90% of your peers asked for. So I know at the beginning of the school you're going, why don't you wait till later? This is something you asked for so we could be in sync with the school report
Right.
card. So this was something response to you.
Yeah.
all.
So I don't think there's any issues with that's open and available now, so districts should be able to get to that. The status on the, I know a lot of people are interested in the status on the instructional device, the workstation bid. That is still an active procurement that's open as a bid, so I can't really get into the details, but I can provide this update, which I think everybody will appreciate, and that is that I feel very confident that we will have contracts awarded out of that bid process, and I want to say that I think that will occur in less than a week. So I think that is really the word everybody wants to, the update that people want to have on that is when is that going to be in place? Because currently we are without any contracts for IDU workstations. And we had informed districts that would be the case, and we're trying to limit that time frame. But so again, I feel confident that we're in a good position there, and that's really the most I can detail I can give you right now. Last comment I want to make, David, I want to thank those districts that have participated and been called in to help us with the audit that we're currently going under the E-rate program, which is an audit on funding year 2011. And again, it's one of those necessary evils that you kind of have to go through from time to time. It's went very well. I feel very confident. The feedback I've gotten so far from those auditors is positive. That should be closed out within the next couple of weeks. So that's just something we've had going on, and there have been some districts that have been pulled in to provide some information to contribute to some things as part of that audit process. So I just want to mention that.
So does anyone, before we turn it over to you to give closing here, is there any questions that bubbled up from Go Soapbox that we need to address? And just so you all know, on our drive back, we talk about these. And so the ones, Chuck, you're talking about is some of the things going on. We'll definitely have a good discussion on our 2-hour drive back to Frankfurt. So is there anything else that you see bubbling up that we should address?
No, David, I think we're good. You know, we've had some good questions come up regarding the light speed implementation that we've answered. Okay, a lot of the questions we've got staff answering as we speak, but a lot of it's just feedback into some of the topics that we've had,
Okay.
which I'll make sure we cover
Good.
on the way back.
Good. Well, thanks for the visit. I appreciate it.
We are honored,
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
more than honored
Yeah.
to have you here today.
So I hope you heard some things that were encouraging or helpful to you.
We did. We also heard a few things that we know we're going to have to get to work
That's
on.
right.
Yeah. Any kind of final words you'd like to say?
I would. I won't turn this into an Academy Award speech, but I'd like to thank our principals and our support staff at Central Office and the people who work in our schools with technology for being here to support all of our group today. Also, Judy Evans, who just is a lifesaver for us as our regional coordinator, our tech support staff here in our district, Carla, who's just continued to grow in her knowledge and ability to lead the staff. Also, our board chairperson. Without a strong board, it would be impossible for school districts to do what we do. I noticed the mayor is here, Mayor Curtis Hardwick, and he, along with our city council members and our county government, who's usually present, they work with us and support our schools in such a great way. The level of support in this district has just never been greater, and it just enables us to do things that we could never do otherwise.
Well, thanks for letting us be part of it.
We are, again, very, very honored that you're here today.
And we'll see you all next month. Take care.
Thank you.